Hi, it's Eve with True Crime and Coke, and I have a listener story I'd like to share. And please, people, if you have anything that is weird, not weird, gross, not gross, exciting, not exciting, strange, unusual, just anything, please tell me so I can read it because I love any story. So that is what I would really like. And you can email them to me at truecrimeandcoke@gmail.com and you will remain anonymous. So I have my very first story and it is from blah 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 blah. See how anonymous I kept it? Dear Eve L., I have a story I would like to tell you. It started in the 1980s in a small Pacific Northwest town, which was pretty boring for many teenagers, so many of us made our own fun with parties, and at parties, the drugs show up. I was a 15-year-old high schooler in 1981, going from a small junior high to a bigger school, and I was guaranteed to meet new friends, and it just so happened I met a group of like-minded boys that lived in the surrounding neighborhoods near and around the high school. And being a rock and roll fan, I was growing my hair, so naturally I surrounded myself around longer-haired males that went there. I started smoking marijuana a year before but never really could find any, so asking one of my new friends if they could get me some opened up a whole new experience for me I'll never forget. For the sake of anonymity, let's call my new friends Willie and Joe. And get this, my father was recently retired from the police department in the main city, so finding a new place to hang out was important, needless to say. I met Willie first at the high school. He was sitting in a hallway with his boombox cranked up, and he was high as a kite on LSD. I got him to turn his radio down enough to remind him he was at school and getting busted on LSD would not make the rest of the day good at all. After school, we would go to his house to smoke joints and listen to Beatles records. After a few months of bugging him to keep getting me weed, he asked if I would like to meet his dealer. I remember being intimidated by it until he told me it was another school kid named Joe who also lived near the school, so I thought it would be cool. A year or so later, after really becoming great friends with these guys, Joe asks me if I'd like to make some money and have all the weed I could imagine. Of course, duh, I said yes. He told me he was going to introduce me to someone who lived a block from the high school, but we have to use a different name for him daily. I didn't think much of it, so he took me over to his house to meet him. We got there, and a lovely lady answered the door and asked us to take a seat. I noticed what looked like a machine gun sitting next to the lady. I'd never seen one in real life before, so I wasn't sure if it was real. And there were also 3 little kids just running around the house. That day, I was told his name was Fred and only answer questions he asks, never asking him anything or to get into small talk. Fred walks into the room. He looks at me and warmly says, "Hi, kiddo, what's your name?" After telling him, he got a serious look on his face and then says, "I have one question for you that will determine if this will work out for us." What was that question? Do you like Star Trek? I was confused a little, but I told him fuck yeah, and I now had a job. My first job or assignment was for me to roll joints and watch a Star Trek marathon with him. He told me to sit in a chair that faced the front door and roll 10 joints. I noticed there wasn't just one machine gun, but 4. At each stationed chair was a gun with a t-shirt over the top, all while the little children ran around the house playing. I spent many days with Fred rolling joints and watching Star Trek. This was my job and I was paid nicely. Then one day, out of the blue, he told me to take the shirt off my station gun. It was now my job to also protect him. I had been promoted. It was my job to shoot, to kill anyone that gets through that door without permission first. Luckily, I never had to. Now let's fast forward about 6 months when Joe called me to meet him about a new job. Fred decided to open up a second-hand shop across from the local ice cream shop, and in one weekend he bought truckloads of bric-a-brac and used clothing from a large estate sale auction. My job was to manage this store, and I had to look up what the heck bric-a-brac is, and it's just like objects or knickknacks. I sat in a seat and wrote receipts for various items. Even though we hardly had any customers, we still managed to sell up to $1,000 of junk in a day. I was officially a money launderer. So how it would work is, at closing time, a guy that I never met before would come to collect the receipts and make the deposits with cash from weed sales. He never said a word to me or looked at me. When I became curious about him, I was told he was our protector and guardian, and to be rest assured, if anything happened to any of us, he would take care of it. And then out of the blue one day, I was told to forget I had ever seen this guy and to never mention him again. They called our guardian Pretty Boy. He was a solid, muscular 6'5" with blonde hair and blue eyes. And his girlfriend, oh my gosh, she looked like she was a supermodel. She kind of looked like your narrator, Eve. Just kidding, I did add that part in there, but this person says that she did look like a model. And one thing I do distinctly remember about Pretty Boy was his icy blue eyes. They were like dead. They had no emotion behind them, definitely no empathy behind them. They were just cold and dead, and I avoided looking at him in the eyes because they paralyzed me with fear. One night I received a phone call to be at Fred's house at 2 a.m. to help with something. When I got there, I was told to go to the garage and wait. The garage door then opens and Fred backs in his truck. We took the canopy off and hung it from the rafters. What happened next was my first lesson in the world of big-time drug dealing. You see, Fred was from Mexico, and every month he went to visit his family there by driving his truck with the 3 young kids and dog in the back, with a mattress and battery-powered television with a VHS machine. So that was probably a really high-tech thing back then. I now found out the importance of the 3 young children running around the house playing all the time. They were taught that if a man in a uniform with a badge ever looks at them while they're in the truck, that they should scream and cry that they were going to be hurt. What he would do is remove the truck's bed liner, and he welded in a storage area. Then after it was filled with kilo bricks, he would put the liner back, use liquid spot welding to make it look normal, and spray paint over lines with the truck's color. He could fit up to 100 kilos in the back of that truck and mattress. I was later told his cousin worked for the border check, and they magically passed through without any problems. Cartel families really do have power. We popped the false liner out and took the bricks of marijuana in through his side door to the basement. There were a few rooms downstairs, one for rehumidifying and expanding the bricks to fluffy buds, and one with a bathtub and a floor drain. The floor of the room was painted a dark red, which confused me until later. And throughout the whole time, the guardian sat quietly by the gate in front of the house that leads to the garage. After unloading about 200 pounds of bricks, I noticed the last few were wrapped in white paper. Those went to a different room. It was 2 kilos of pure cocaine. I would say we brought in over $200,000 in product to a room already half filled to the ceiling. When the cocaine started coming around, so did the users and junkies. One hot summer night, a bunch of us friends were at Joe's watching movies in his garage when 2 men in masks walked through the back door, holding handguns. One of the men stuck the gun to my head and said, "Who's the man?" I said, "I'm not the man." That was the first time and last I've stared down the barrel of what looked like a .45 caliber gun. He then asked again with anger. Joe finally said he was the man. Those men wanted that cocaine that Joe sold for Fred. Along with our wallets, those guys got a good ounce or more of pure Bolivian white gold. After they left with it, a friend came in and saw them drive away and gave us the plate number to the car. It also happened that we had an associate that worked at the DMV and they found them easily. In the meantime, we were all extremely paranoid due to the fact those guys had all of our addresses. I contacted a friend of mine that collected guns. All 5 of us now were ready. One evening, the burglar alarm went off in my home while I was sleeping. I saw a black car speed away from my house. I was locked and loaded. A few weeks later, I was told what happened to those 2 guys. Apparently, our guardian met them as a customer for the cocaine. Our friend at DMV pulled through. I was told a story of what might have happened to people like them. If it's true, I'll never know. But I know. In a certain basement, people were taken, killed, then cut up in a bathtub. Body parts were then wrapped in newspaper, then loaded into a fishing boat and dumped piece by piece with a lead fishing weight into a deep part of the river where sturgeon and catfish are known to be, all before the light of day. The area and tub were simply bleached, then the floor repainted dark red. There was no luminol used in my small town, and DNA testing was not available yet, so it was very easy to make problems disappear. Scavenger fish eliminated them. I became scared to death of what I became involved with, all because I once asked someone if they knew where to get weed. I was about to turn 18 years old. Fred told me that my services were no longer needed. He thanked me with a great Mexican dinner, a stack of cash, and a few ounces of weed. He explained to me that all of his employees had to be minors, so there would be less chance of jail convictions if anything were to go wrong. So I figured out why he was set up a block from the high school. Kids could be easily manipulated and would buy pot from other kids all day long. I never saw Fred again, but a year later Joe called me to say undercover police finally found out about the operation, and Fred was in federal prison. His children were taken from him. It was over. Another year passed, and I had become married. I had a normal job, a normal life, and quit smoking marijuana simply because I knew blood was on the operations. Now, cannabis is legal across the whole West Coast. I still smile as I drive by the many dispensaries, knowing in the 1980s I was part of the major dispensary for most towns around my state. Sincerely, Anonymous. So thank you, blah 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 blah, for writing this to me. And again, my email is truecrimeandcoke@gmail.com. And if you want to check out my YouTube page at True Crime and Coke, and heck, if you even want to tell me the story through a live stream, we can do that too. So, have a good evening.